Absolutely it's their responsibility, but you are holding them accountable.
Oh, 100%.
Which is key too.
Yeah, I think of myself a lot as Sauron's eye from Lord of the Rings, It's like, we have a lot of orcs. And then I am just, looking around and being like, there's the ring, and I've got to go in there and yes, let's fix this, I think of myself as a dot connector.
So we are here with Ryan. Mm-hmm. Ryan, tell me a little bit about who you are and what you're involved with.
Yeah, man. My name is Ryan Sheley, and I'm the managing partner at Maple Hall and Babalu down here on Gay Street, part of the Alley LLC, kind of our larger hospitality group, and a Knoxville native, right? Had a wild run there for about a decade that brought me back to Knoxville in my late 20s and early 30s, and I've been here ever since, man.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You've mentioned briefly your wild run. So what was that?
Man, I went to UT and moved over to Charleston for a while, and then decided to come home and getting over that love of my life type moment. Everybody has that, like, what am I going to do with my life type situation. And so I did the unpopular thing and started a rock band and went out on tour for 8 years, about 350 days a year. Oh, that's a lie, about 300 days a year. And we lived it, man. We went out and lived it. We're really, really fortunate to be able to make a living doing it.
That's awesome. How cool, or how much more appreciation now do you have for coming back? As somebody who's left where they kind of grew up, but still able to go back very often. And now you live, I still live in East Tennessee too, but do you have more of appreciation for here now, knowing what's out there?
Absolutely. And that was something that became very apparent through the years of touring. You see the whole country, right? You see, overseas, we're really lucky to get to see what felt like everything at the time. But I kept coming back to the natural beauty here, the people, the culture. There's a lot to be said for East Tennessee that, a lot of folks don't understand. It doesn't get the press that maybe Nashville does, or doesn't have the old school fame of Memphis. Right. Yeah. But East Tennessee is the heart and soul. It's the charm of the state to me.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And so coming back was natural. And of course, it's easy to come home, but you could have gone anywhere. And it felt right to come back home.
One thing, okay, so we were talking beforehand, and we've talked about your time on the road. Did you say you lived in Key West at one point?
Yeah, for a while, off and on in Key West for about 5 years, yeah.
How cool was that? I went on my honeymoon, and we had to listen to this timeshare spiel.
Oh, right, right.
Bus ride down there.
Yeah.
We were like, my wife and I were 21 and 20, and we were the youngest on that bus by like 40 years at least.
Right.
And then, so we got down there, and it was hot as a mug. And we didn't realize, like, everything's walkable.
Go right.
But like, we were just drained by the sun, and we were like, this would be a really cool place if we had a way to get around.
Yeah.
How cool was it? Like, what was it like living there? I think is something that I kind of.
Well, it's a bubble.
Really?
It's a bubble.
Okay.
And I think for musicians, that's nice because it was kind of comforting to know that if I needed groceries, I went to the Winn-Dixie. Yeah. I didn't have options. Yeah. It's almost like going to a restaurant. Like if you go to the Cheesecake Factory, I'm not knocking Cheesecake Factory, but you go through the 15-page menu and you're like, what am I going to get? And it's like, you go to a barbecue shack and you're like, pulled pork sandwich. It's like, there's something relaxing about that though. Yeah. And that was Key West. I think that's why it's always been an artist hub. The musician's hub, and it's digestible. Yeah, and there's a ton of work for artists. Right, it's an artist community.
I never really thought about that, but even just a little bit that we were there.
Well, think about it. There's certain communities that people or artists gravitate to. Key West is one. New Orleans is one. Right. I would even say Savannah, Georgia, or St. Augustine, Florida. That's just in the Southeast. There's the little hubs of musical gold. Key West is one, and there's obviously a long storied history there that goes way beyond Jimmy Buffett. Yeah, right. That's the famous export. But it's an incredible place. I was fortunate enough as a kid. My cousin Karen lived there and still does. Married Clark is like a 6th generation conch. Like, really? Like Clark's family were wreckers. And that's how Key West became one of the wealthiest places in the country in the 1700s, because these ships would wreck on the reefs. The locals would go out and rob the ships, bring it back to the island, and everybody got rich as hell, right? So it started this thing down there. And Key West is called Cayo Hueso, which means, Bone Island. Mm-hmm. It's built on indigenous graveyards. It is this mystical, spooky place. Again, I think all that energy is what brings artists and people there, and why people feel such a connection to it.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I love hearing about, like, especially, does it feel like I found whenever I live in a specific spot for like a relatively short amount of time, but you have a lot of memories in that time, I always feel like it's like a movie that I watch, and it can be so far disconnected from where you are now. But
yeah, that's how it feels.
I think those kinds of stories are so cool. So you kind of had that run with music.
Yeah.
And then you rolled into business. What did that transition look like for you?
It was terrifying.
I bet. Yeah.
I mean, just the only way to put it. I think I got to a place with the band where, that's when you're touring like that, it's a lot and you miss a lot. And I think I was always one of those dudes that was 51% all in. I mean, lived it to the bone. Yeah. And then there's 49% of me that was like, man, I would love to have a wife and kids one day. I would love to settle down and start a business and live the American dream, right? And then one day those percentages flip-flopped and then grew apart.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And so when I felt that flip-flop, I knew it was time to come home and get busy.
Yeah.
And I was eager because I felt like even though I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, because I've learned now that it taught me everything I know now, even though I didn't know I was learning it. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad I let those percentages flip. And like you said, now it's just a beautiful chapter you get to look back on. But yeah, the transition was scary because it's, what am I going to do? And so much of my identity at the time was tied up in music. Right. Yeah. I had completely abandoned my early professional career in lieu of music. And then, that was a real thing for me. I think I had to work through for a couple of years, trying to refine who I was and what I was about.
Did you have a specific moment in which you're like, okay, like I've been feeling this out for a year or two, and then you say, all right, this is, I know now? Or was it always did you kind of feel your way out, kind of, test some waters, and then whatever stuck you went with? Or what did that even look like? Was there a specific moment where you say, all right, this is what I'm doing, this is my opportunity, I'm going to take it?
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
It was when we were able to get Maple Hall started. Really? I think that was the moment. It was like, all right, I was fortunate enough. My dad brought Wendy's to East Tennessee back in the early 70s. I grew up around restaurants. He had a restaurant simultaneously while doing all that over in the Old City, the late 80s, when the Old City got its name. Yeah. Right. It was the Bowery District in the 18 and early 1900s, or Irish Town or something like that. Growing up down there with the old businesses, his office was the visitor center over here on Gay Street. Mm-hmm. I grew up there. I grew up in Knoxville and valued it. So yeah, that opportunity to come back and operate on Gay Street, I knew was a rare opportunity. There's only so many buildings on Gay Street. And if I was going to come back home to Knoxville, why not go right to the heart of it and see if we could impact it? So it started there. And I think at my age at that point in time, being 30, I knew I had to impact it. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of time to make it too many strikeouts.
There's no time for that. So there was really a sense of urgency behind the effort to get that going, and then to get it right. Yes. All right. To dial our culture in, and that's its own journey too. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, there was no time to strike out. So I think I felt that pressure inherently, but that same pressure is probably what made us good.
Yeah. I was really interested, and this is something that I want to know, is like, to me, there are two kinds of restaurants, and we worked a lot in the beauty industry. We've worked in some, and even media, like creative fields. Like you can tell whenever there's people who are creative, who want to like they want to be creative, and then the business just follows. And there's people who realize like that this is a business, and we harness creativity to bring value to people. And it seems like to me like. The classic example is like a tale of two restaurants. Like you have the one who has, a lady in town who loves to cook, and she opens a restaurant. Right. And then you have like places that like Maple Hall and Babalu down there is like, those are like legit businesses. And what do you think in your experience, what makes the difference between those two? You know, there's a lot less consistency in that first restaurant and stuff like that. Like, what do you think makes a restaurateur versus somebody who owns a restaurant?
Man, what a great question. You know, there's one thing that marries both of those ideas or thought patterns, and that's passion. If you're grandma and grandma makes the best biscuits and she opens a biscuit restaurant, you know, she did it because she loves making biscuits. If I'm a creative person and I love building things and I love interior design, right, and all that stuff, it's still a passion, right? Or food, or putting the beverage program together, whatever that is. So passion is the foundational element to both. I would venture to say it comes down to your willingness to, and this is a bit of a twist from your question, but the thing that would set those two apart in my mind would come down to the leadership. You know, if grandma makes the best biscuits, well, what happens if something happens to grandma?
Yes. Yeah.
Where's your consistency?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, grandma's going to get tired of making biscuits 7 days a week. Grandma needs a break. I mean, you may have seen the top restaurant in the world. I forget its name right now. It's overseas, but the chef is like, we're taking reservations through the end of 24 and then I'm out. It's not sustainable. You know, when you're out hand foraging for everything that's
truffle,
right? It's just like, it's exhausting. And he's just like, I'm done. It's been an unbelievable run, but I'm out. So the same thing applies to grandma. So I've always been fearful of that. I don't want, just because I might have a skill set that I can use for success, that's not good enough. And we're not going to have sustainability as a company if I can't train other people to do what I do, and then they need to train people to do what they do. And so it comes to the hiring process of who is like-minded, who is talented, and then giving them opportunity to come in and kind of grow on their own. I always like to call myself in our business the riverbanks. I don't want it to flood. I want to keep it within the banks and moving in a certain direction. And as long as I'm doing that, you know, the staff and the team can be the river. They're the ones on the kayaks. They're the ones, you know, swimming, whatever that is. We just got to keep it between the banks. So finding like-minded people that see it the same way, that understand the value in developing people around them.
So would you say it's kind of fair to say that building systems is incredibly important? And then you kind of have to, but you have to find the right people to facilitate those systems
100%.
And implement those systems. Absolutely. Now that we've been talking about it, it kind of clicks in my head. It's like, okay, yeah. In the restaurants in which, you know, you see somebody who is like burning themselves out, like it's always like because I mean, really in a lot of restaurants, it seems to me it's like, I could never go into restaurants because it's like everybody's getting burned out. They're all like, it looks like their margins aren't good. You know, they're always having turnover.
And all that's in the press too.
Yeah.
So guests come in and they feel that. So if you do have an overworked staff, which I would venture to say that, you know, every restaurant in the city probably would, if you polled them, would be like, yeah, we're overworked. You know, no one's gonna be like, oh, it's a breeze here. Yeah. You know, that's a real thing. I think you have to fight to kind of tie into your point in talking about processes and systems and belief systems is really the thing that I latch onto. It's controlling your rhetoric in the workplace.
Yeah.
If I tell you you're tired, you're going to say, man, I'm tired.
Yeah. That's
right.
True. Yeah.
So it's a little bit of that manipulation in a positive way. You know, positive manipulation means it's good for everybody. Just to say, hey, you got this, man. You're killing it. This shift's over soon.
Yeah.
It's a way to repackage I'm tired in a more uplifting, meaningful way. So we really focus on the rhetoric you put into the restaurant. And it's a way that I also gauge how serious someone is about their career. Because, you know, you're always looking at things kind of in contrast to yourself. Just like I said a minute ago, when I got that opportunity to get involved with that on the ground level, I would be damned if I failed.
Yeah.
So if I give someone an opportunity and they don't take it seriously, in my mind, I'm saying, well, they have no plan of growth with this company.
Yeah.
Or for themselves, quite frankly. Who do they think is going to be promoting them? And so if they can't do it in that moment, then it's something that you're kind of logging away and watching for.
Yeah. So, and okay, so now tell me what you think about this, because I'm kicking over this idea as far as the role of a leader or manager or an entrepreneur. one of the roles that they should strive for is, number one, is creating systems, but also optimizing those systems and creating systems that optimize the people that work within the systems return for their input, if that makes sense. So like you said earlier, if somebody's like, if they can come in and they feel like, hey, I put in my all, and like they got that message from you saying, hey, shift's almost over, you're doing great, like I know you're wore down, but they can see like, okay, all this effort I put in, number one, I'm making more money, the firm is taking off, the actual business is thriving, I only have to play these parts, and I have to do these parts very well. And because you as a manager have created a system to where they only have to focus on what they're going to do. That's something that I have to applaud with the businesses that I've been in that you manage. Is I see that very clearly, and it's clear to me that businesses that have systems like that and that don't, because people feel like they're just spinning their wheels, and I think that's how fatigue sets in too. Is like they're like, well, crap, I'm doing this, and then you have slackers, and then you have people that aren't putting as much effort. But if you can set up systems to where you say, all right, all you have to do is be the best touch point for getting your bowling shoes out to these people. Or you have to be the best bartender you can be. I'm not going to ask you to do anything. I'm going to ask you to do whatever you do extremely well, but these are your responsibilities, and these are what I expect from you.
Absolutely.
And you can tell that's, we had talked about that, is like setting clear expectations, being 100% transparent. Is that harder now today, do you think? Or do you think that that's just something that as managers, we don't get trained on as much as being like, be transparent with the people that you manage? Or
I think it's what you just said. Yeah. It comes down to the communication, right? I think it's, and this is a personal opinion, but growing up, getting into business, you have this, especially if you're a pleaser, right? Like I'm a natural pleaser. I want people to be happy. You have this expectation for yourself that you have to be awesome at absolutely everything. Yeah. And I learned really early that if we were going to be successful, I didn't need to be handling our numbers. It's not my forte, right? So I got someone in there to do that really well. And then that got me thinking, well, that's not unique to me, that I'm only good at 3 or 4 or 5 things, right? Like really good. Yeah. And there's 5, 6, 7, 15 things I suck at, right? Well, that's everybody. Yeah. So we need to understand our people and then help put them in positions to ultimately be successful by asking them to do the things they're good at. And I think that builds confidence, and it simplifies the job a lot. And that's something too that you hope wards off some of the burnout. To your point, when you're saying, hey, we're just asking you to do this. I don't need you to worry about all this other stuff. That's what I'm here for. That's what he's here for. That's what they're here for. It allows people to compartmentalize their job in a way that's then digestible. Yes. Think of any large task you stare down in life and you're like, how in the world am I going to get my arm? Where do I start? Yeah. It could be a school project, right? Where do I start? And anytime you have a starting point, hey, greet these people when they come down the stairs. That's all I'm worried about right now. We'll focus on step 2, 3, and 4 in the coming weeks. But right now, greet every person that comes in like it's your auntie you have not seen in 4 years who always bought you the best birthday gifts. Yeah, yeah. Right? And so, break the job down like that. And as a leader, hopefully you have the soft skills to impart that on them in a way that leaves them feeling uplifted. And that's a critical too when it comes to discipline. That you can break somebody down while simultaneously building them up. And there's a bit of an art to that, but I think it's really important because when people understand, and you said this word, the transparency that you have, my experience has been that they're going to listen to you more. I love being a vulnerable leader. I love telling them, I failed at this. I failed you. If this was important to me, I could have followed up more than I did. And you dropped the ball, but I dropped the ball too. And when you share failure and that you allow your ego to die in that, in that sense, I think it bonds people together and it allows them to manage in a way without fear. Yes. Fear managing will doom anything. You can't do anything when you're scared. Like talk about being on the roof. Oh yeah. Right. You're scared to death. You're on the top of the roof. It's wet. It's like, I'm going to break my neck. The last thing you're thinking about is the task that you're up on the roof for. Mm-hmm. So if they're like, man, my boss is going to kill me, this is going to happen, well, maybe I will. Mm-hmm. But we're going to talk about it first. I'm going to self-reflect and how did I let you down? Mm-hmm. First and foremost, because it all starts and stops with me. Mm-hmm. So you have to have that understanding. And then we'll assess where it went wrong and how we can correct it next time. And the only caveat I would add to that is my hope with that employee is that it won't happen next time.
Yeah.
And that's the grace. Mm-hmm. I believe we all deserve grace.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so do you have, this is just for, this is something that I would have found incredibly helpful and interesting even just 6 months ago. Do you have a system for yourself? Like, I think it's clear working in the service industry or working with anybody, like people like to be led in different ways. Some maybe are more negative or, they respond better to negative motivation or positive or whatever. Do you kind of have, do you change how you manage, or do you have kind of a system or a template? Or I think we had spoken before about you kind of have like your baselines, and then everything else is kind of you play it by ear, right? Mm-hmm. Is that what, can you kind of go into how you go about that with different people?
Yeah. I mean, it's understanding of different managerial styles, one. And then, like you said, if it's someone in the managerial realm, which would be the people that I would directly manage, right?
Sure.
I'll do personality profiles on all those people.
Wow.
We'll pay, we'll have them in a folder. I'll study them. Wow. Understand what makes them tick.
Yeah.
And then again, it gets back to applying their talents for the good of the company. I need to understand who they are.
Sure.
Because another hard thing about being a leader or a boss is remembering that you're the boss. Mm-hmm. Because in my mind, oftentimes I'm that same dude playing a schooner wharf in Key West. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to get a young person in front of you that's like, oh, that's my boss. And you don't even consider that they might be nervous. Because that seems foreign and silly. Like, why would they be nervous around me? Well, it's your boss and they don't know me. Mm-hmm. Right. So there's all kinds of levels of understanding built into that. And like we were talking before we started this, self-awareness is critical. Okay, I know this about this person. I know their communication style. I know they struggle with confrontation. So we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to try to disarm confrontation. And we're going to take, if they have to go manage a person and they're nervous about it, I always tell them, take that person's name and face off the situation. You're managing a personality type. Mm-hmm. And you're going to manage this personality type for the rest of your career. You might only interact with it 5 times, but you will. And so go ahead and slay the dragon. Okay? Get used to battling confrontation and being in it, because if you have a desire to make a lot of money or to rise up in this company or any company for that matter, because I always like to tell our people, I don't care if you get famous with us. I don't care if you make a lot of money with us. Mm-hmm. I just want you to learn things while you're with us that you can take anywhere.
Sure. Yeah. You're giving him a fishing pole. Yeah.
That's it. And I think it's really that simple. Mm-hmm. In our company, at least. It's not some deep thing. I mean, it's just like, we're just teaching you basic stuff of how to act and how to think and act strategically, I should say. And if you can start to master that, not even master it, just begin that journey, you're going to do this in your career.
Yeah.
Because not many people are in a constant growth mindset. And when you create a growth mindset in your team and they start sharing emails with links to, Harvard Business Review articles and things like that, or you have a manager, it's like, yo, we're starting a book club.
That's so cool.
Right? I mean, we're fortunate to have all that stuff in our company that happens all the time. And we're going to meet on X date and review the first 6 chapters. And they're taking it upon themselves to lead each other. Yeah. That's that whole conversation in real life. It's working. Can I influence management to influence staff to influence each other? Mm-hmm. That's it. It's the waterfall effect. And if you can't do that, your company can't grow.
I think what's so cool to see is, from the outside looking in, as you're describing that waterfall, is you as the managing partner, you disseminate that to the managers, mm-hmm. but then you have the trust and you allow them the space to then disseminate that to to the people that are reporting to them. And then everybody else pushes it down the side. And then I think an awesome side effect to that is every single step, there's a certain level of responsibility because they're doing it on their own accord.
Yeah.
You're trusting them. They have ownership on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to utilize, like if you're hiring great people, you get to utilize all their great talents each step along the way. So in theory, that message is getting better and better and more focused and more, it's really, that is so cool. Is that something that you learned, or have you always been able to have that trust, or did it take a while to hone that in to be like, okay, I don't need to micromanage all the way down?
It's inherent for me.
Yeah.
But it was, I became confident in it years ago when I discovered Jocko Willink.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about that the other day, reading about Jocko and the decentralized command philosophy. I thought, well, hell, that's what we're already doing.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't realize it had a name or that it was a thing. So it was just kind of inherent, but that's all it is. And you're exactly right. Like if they're on the front lines, they know it better than me. Mm-hmm. Right. And I trust them to come to me and say, hey, that was a bad order. We need to go this way. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to listen to them.
Yeah.
And then, if that winds up being bad, that's when we sit back down and say, where did we go wrong? Mm-hmm. And we get to analyze it and grow from it. The only little thing, the only nuance in that whole waterfall effect is those managers have to be bought in.
Yes.
If they're not bought in, if they turn into a cancer, if they're not controlling the rhetoric in the business, like we discussed earlier, if they're poisoning the thing they care about, then I know they're not serious about their career, at least with us. So that's the thing you're kind of looking for the whole time.
Yeah. Are
they lazy with their mouth, or do they take ownership? Because complaining feels good. I complain a lot. It feels good, right? You get it off your chest, and there's a time and place for that. I just like that to be in private and with people who can actually impact the situation in a positive way. Mm-hmm. And if it's not, then it's a detriment to the company and the culture we're trying to grow.
Yeah, I think and I think it makes total sense of that waterfall strategy only makes sense whenever you are able to, through your diligence of your hiring, bring in people who are going to fit that system.
Absolutely.
So it all fits in together.
Yes, but that is the catch-22 of this hiring climate we're in.
True. Is right? Those people are harder and harder to find.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Or they cost or more expensive, right? So it really comes down to, do you think you're good enough to get that out of anybody? Mm-hmm. And
that's true. Yeah,
it does. And that's a level of arrogance, not in an ill sense, but I think you almost have to have in this hiring climate, because we've hired a lot of people that weren't fits, and they may have said the right things, but when they got in, they weren't fits. And it's okay to not be a fit. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're a bad worker. It just means you're not a fit. And that's fine. But yeah, there's no guarantees in this climate, especially in our industry. It's definitely been a challenge. Have you
had success as far as like bringing someone in who maybe in the beginning you say, okay, we have to do a little bit of work on this, but then they eventually come through?
Man, I think that has been, without a doubt, the greatest thing about my job has been watching the growth of certain people as they may start off young and brash, and you leave a meeting and that they're in there saying, that guy's an idiot, he doesn't know, and he's a loudmouth, and then they stick with it, and then you see them turn into something, and whether that's taking a job offer for something I couldn't provide, or moving and taking a job in another city and becoming successful, that's why you do it. It's probably a lot like being a teacher.
Yeah.
You have certain students that you're like, wow, like, you've got it. And you need to listen to what I'm saying. You're going to think I'm dumb now, but there's going to be someday, somewhere down the line, you're going to be like, that dude knew what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And the only reason I know what I'm talking about is because I have screwed up in every possible way. Right. And I had nobody sit me down outside of my dad, but I didn't want to listen to my dad at that point in time. Yeah. I didn't have
they're impartial. Yeah.
I didn't have a professional mentor.
Sure.
Outside of maybe Tall Paul, the local musician, who was incredible to me and is a dear friend. Paul tried to steer me the right way a bunch. And that really resonated with me. I always listened to him, but I didn't have a lot of those growing up. And it wasn't because I wasn't around awesome people. I was. You have to really have that coaching mentality or that teacher mentality to want to impart that on people and do it in a way where they're not just like, oh, it's unsolicited advice from this know-it-all.
Yeah.
Right. It has to be kind of organic and natural, and you kind of have to find your moments for it. And that comes back to that kind of that self-awareness of the situation and the person. When are they going to be available to listen? Yeah. Active listening, right?
Well, that's the other side of that double-edged sword of when a young person comes in front of you and they're nervous, you don't even think about it.
Right.
They're nervous that you're your boss, or they're nervous to mess up. But then also you have that same, because you're coming from that authority, that impartial, like, hey, you've got something here. You can really make something of yourself. Yeah. That's going to be that much more impactful. So that's the other side of that. People may be nervous whenever you're around them, but then that you can also, in the appropriate timing, harness that to then inspire a confidence in them that really probably not many other people have the power to do. I mean, because this person, you look at it as like the people that you directly report to. I mean, if those people say, hey, you've got something here, you're providing value to not only me, but everybody else here on the team. And it's like, that is extremely powerful.
Yeah. You nailed it. That's it.
That's huge. So really, I also want to get into what does you're a managing partner of two businesses. How do you manage two? Is it do you hit the same philosophy across the board, or are they different? One's a restaurant, one is more of an
They're very different
experience event type.
Very different.
Yeah. How do you personally kind of go about? Do you have to switch on and off? Do you take a whole day for one?
No, that's a great question. I think that's something I'm developing and learning. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that growth mindset. I never want to sit there and feel like I've got anything figured out. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that's also the thing that keeps our company energized is we don't just say, all right, well, we've wrote a training manual, roll it out, show up. It's just like, I took a manager to lunch the other day and I said this, it's exactly how I said it. I was like, what sucks? Yeah. What sucks? And he's like, well, I take notes after every shift. And I was like, well, we're going to lunch again in 2 weeks. And I want you to bring me the list of suck. And I'm going to get the general manager in here and we're going to go through the list of suck together and we're going to fix every single thing on it. Mm-hmm. And, I just think that's the only way to get in with your people, to brainstorm, to allow them to solve problems with upper management and leadership, to even the playing field in that regard. That creates buy-in. Yeah. Right. It creates, my hope in doing that is always, I feel like, anytime you get to influence something in a business, it's almost like leaving a little cookie trail. You're as they come and pick up all the little cookies over the course of time, you're feeding their motivation, right? You're trying to get them closer to where you need them to be. So that's part of a motivational tactic too, to make people feel invested. And it's genuine. It's not just, a tactic. I mean, I guess it is, but it's real, it's genuine. And I think those things only happen, like I said, when you flush ego out of the equation, and it's about how are we going to get this great? Yes. Because it takes a long time to get something great. When you open a business, you can only open with who applies. And it gets back to what I said a minute ago. It doesn't mean they're fit. It could take 2 years and 4 staff turnovers to whittle it down to the 50 people that you're like, all right, now we can wage war. Yeah. and you just hope in the 2 years prior that you keep enough fans and don't turn enough people off that you can stay in business and then grow it. Mm-hmm. Because there's no guarantee when you open what you're going to get. Mm-hmm. Have you seen the movie Death of Stalin? No. It's actually a comedy movie, but it takes place I'm glad he died though. Yeah. So it's a comedy movie. It's a British comedy movie. So it's pretty dry and I like British comedy because it's smart. I do too. Yeah. And it's about like the death of Stalin and essentially the transition of power after he died. Right. But it's really interesting. And I've really found myself really diving into and then trying to immerse myself in reading and studying about prime Soviet Russia, because it's like so many people in that time did the exact opposite of what you're saying you want people in your organization to do. Instead of saying, bring me the suck, they say, lie to me and tell me stuff doesn't suck. And then like at each level that ignorance is bliss. Correct. And I think you should really watch that movie. It's incredibly funny, but number two is like, you really see when you research it and say how much of this was true, it's crazy because you can see it's like every step along the way, like it starts at the very base. Everybody's lying to protect their own good.
because there's this ultimate power up top that if whoever the blame gets shifted on or is holding the bag at the end of the day is going to, like in those cases, is going to get killed. But like, I think a lot of organizations and business today have that one, that omnipowerful person at the top. And it's not, are we getting better as an organization? It's not, hey, bring me a list of sucks so we can improve on these things. It's what went wrong, who's holding the blame, that person's whacked. We're not going to learn from this. We're not going to build from this. It's just whoever can we place the blame on, that person is gone, or they're getting reprimanded horribly in front of everybody to make an example out of them. And it's the exact opposite of
fear management.
Fear.
Who likes that?
Purely based on fear. And it was amazing to me that a whole country could be based on that.
That's insane.
And went along for so long.
Yeah.
That's very interesting to me, but I'm finding a lot of parallels in a lot of these more toxic management situations. So it's really cool to see that with your dissemination of authority and thereby dissemination of responsibility, and then with that responsibility and power. So each level of responsibility that you pass on to somebody else, you're also giving them the authority to handle those things on their own, which is the only healthy way to do it. Because if you give somebody responsibility without the authority to carry out the responsibility, you're setting them up for failure.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's so awesome.
And they're going to feel like they're in a cage.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's no fun.
And you lose. And this is a point that I wanted to reach back into. Like, you are able, with your management systems that you've put into place, you get a level of flexibility and reactive. You get a reaction capability that far outpaces anybody that does a fear-based management model or a more top-down, like, pressure model.
Yeah.
And it's the same as, you're talking about military, is like, that's what makes the American military so dynamic versus a Russian or any other traditional top down, is they're having to report 3 levels up before they can make a decision. Meanwhile, America pushes that responsibility down to the lowest level. Their team leaders report to squad leader, reports to the platoon sergeant, it goes up, but each level has their own responsibilities.
Right.
And I think that is so incredibly powerful. Do you think, have you seen other people that you have worked with that you said, have just taken other opportunities and stuff like that? Have you seen them take those lessons that they've learned there and implement it other places? Or is that pretty cool? I know you said it's like got to be like being a teacher.
It is like it's like being a teacher. It is cool, but I think what you just laid out is critical, and it comes back to, I just want to hit on that.
Yeah,
flexibility. We have to be nimble.
Yes,
we're in an ever-changing business. And if I have a kitchen leader or a KM who just says, man, we always order 4 baskets of pretzels or 4 boxes of pretzels. And we're like, yo, this is the slowest week of the year. Maybe we just need 1.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have to be, I know that's like,
no, but it's a perfect example.
It is, because it's like, it's day to day. It's week to week. That prep list, we need to be looking back at the last 6 years of sales on this day. Do we really need to prep 3 tubs of beer cheese for Tuesday night? Or do we prep 1 and make sure it's the best beer cheese these people have ever had?
Yeah. Right. Because you're only going to sell 1.
We're only going to sell 1.
Yeah.
Right. So don't let that thing sit on the shelf for an extra day. Let's make it fresh tomorrow. Right. And just managing it down, micromanaging it without micromanaging it. Does that make sense?
You're just taking accountability. You're just going in and spot checking.
That's absolutely
it's their responsibility, but you are holding them accountable.
Oh, 100%.
Which is key too.
Yeah, I think of myself a lot as Sauron's eye from Lord of the Rings. It's like, we have a lot of orcs. And then I am just, looking around and being like, there's the ring, and I've got to go in there and yes, let's fix this, I think of myself as a dot connector. So
have you noticed, that does it take some people time to acclimate to that kind of like, I mean, I know it's got to take some people time to used to be like, oh, well, I can do this on my own accord.
Yeah, it does. It does. Now, I think there's certain personality types that are more drawn to it. If you are a rigid type A, just your whole day is mapped out from start to finish, we might be a difficult company. We're a little more, hey, it's Mardi Gras, it's just kind of like in that sense, because I do want so many people to feel like they can navigate within their realms. So there's some trade-offs there, maybe getting where we do have a lot of processes, I think there's also other processes that are like under constant development.
Sure.
And that's just because we're constantly navigating and watching how these people are responding to the situations we're allowing them to be in. I mean, I'm okay with people failing. I really am, because it's the only way they're going to learn. Like I said, I've failed at so many things in my life, but I've tried to learn from them. And I want those people to have the same experience without the fear managing, without that negativity in our workplace. So yeah, it's certain personality types would probably be like, this is not regimented enough. But if it suits you, then it clicks. Does that make sense?
Yes. Well, and I think it comes down to, we were talking on another podcast. It was like, you know, when you're working at capacity, you know, when things are working. And a lot of times it takes just somebody experiencing that one time to say, oh, so this is what doing things the right way looks like.
Yeah.
This is what my ideal day looks like. And then now at least you have a yardstick of which you can measure against. And you say, all you need is want your first ideal day, or where you did everything that you could.
Right.
You did everything right.
So let's open that real quick, because I think this is all part of the philosophy of the whole thing.
Sure.
Everybody has a different bandwidth for stress. Right? Like, for real, you never know what someone's dealing with at home, their family life, their love life, if they have one, or lack thereof, how that's impacting. You just never know. And so that's probably a reason I like people to live within the space. And as long as we are accomplishing things, I'm not going to get hung up on the type A processes of, it is now lunchtime. You know what I'm saying? Like, exactly. And like if I worked in a doctor's office, like, I'm not knocking doctor's offices, but I'm just saying, like, you know, I just think about how regimented that is. My wife stays pretty regimented. Their CEO is, he and I are boys because we see things kind of the same way, but Jennifer is a CPA, right? She's a CFO. Like, she's, you know, I was a musician. I mean, like, you can't, right? So I think that's part of that thing. But yeah, dude, you want people. I lost my train of thought there. I got laughing, but yeah, man, whatever. We'll move on.
No, I think that's true, because, you know, I think that's something that you kind of have to figure out about yourself too. Is like, am I that type of person that can go willy-nilly or go?
I knew what I was going to say.
Yes, hop back in.
Of processes, every Monday we hold what's called a Scrum meeting. Familiar with Scrum meetings?
No.
They started in IT firms. Everybody stands in a circle. They're 15 minutes tops, and they are terrifying, and they're fun. Really? So where I make it sound loosey-goosey, it is perhaps in the execution of the day-to-day when you want to go to lunch. If you call and you're like, hey man, I got a flat tire, right? Or whatever those things are, we allow that flexibility. I don't want to make it sound like, you know, we're running a circus.
You're flexible. Yeah.
We're flexible. But the Scrum, you know, 11 a.m. on Monday morning, every department head, me, financial controller, or general managers, all stand in a circle, and we operate on 2-week schedules, and we send everything into HR in advance, and we say, okay, we're updating our menu at Babalu for the spring. Recipes have to be to the financial controller by X date. R&D has to happen this date. Greg's coming in from Johnson City. You know, Greg's going to be here and wants to try the R&D. And you might go around and be like, okay, well, we have for marketing, we need blah, blah, blah. We've got the Tennessee basketball team coming in, and everybody goes through what they're working on. It goes on a living spreadsheet. And every Monday, did you finish it? Did you do your part? Did you do your part? No, get it done. And you're doing it in front of everybody.
Oh, wow.
So nobody wants to get
in front of everybody and be the one person that dropped the ball.
So where it is flexible, we're also driving it.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we're just eating up 2-week chunks of work.
That's awesome.
So I'm going to tie it all together now and say that as long as we're accomplishing those 2-week chunks, I'm not going to get hung up on the top end of, did you work 45 hours or was it 38, but you got your shit done?
Yes. Cool. In that way, you are encouraging efficiency.
That's it. Absolutely.
And then you're rewarding efficiency as well. And then also there's that level of accountability, but then also I think another side effect that is, or another byproduct of that is everybody gets a clear vision of the entire
thing. That's it.
And then they realize that they are just a cog.
That's it.
Or really not just a cog. They all matter to the entire vision.
That's it.
And then, but it's vision based. So then at the end of the day, it's like, okay, this is what we laid out to do. And as long as the customer, the experience this, and this, then our job is accomplished here.
Yes.
You know, I think that's a cool,
isn't it?
Cool concept.
Yeah. Well, my wife's company does it. And I've listened to her talk about it. I'm like, why are we not doing that? You know, we were holding bi-weekly deep dives and monthly all hands with everybody and making them kind of leadership topic based. And then I thought, man, you know, because I'm constantly, because I'm always in a growth mindset, I'm trying to think like, do my people or our people want more meetings?
Sure.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Right. If it's their day off, but it's convenient for me. Yeah. Right. I'm going to call the meeting and they've got to get in there for an hour and interrupt their day at 1:00. And I think post pandemic, that was really important for the connectivity, right? As everybody was like getting used to working together again. But now our team is pretty tenured, been around. There's a lot of trust. So we can reduce those meetings. And so we just packaged all those into the Scrum. And then if we find a situation that's like falls outside the purview of the Scrum, then we'll have a sidebar afterwards. Or we'll set aside a meeting time for it that everybody agrees on. Again, just trying to value people's personal life, trying to value their time away from the job. I mean, job is not life.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So understanding the job's role in someone's life is important. And again, we're trying to build something sustainable and long-term. Our company is not done growing. This is the birth of it right now. So this growth mindset is really critical because it's really shaping our future. And that's kind of just where we're at.
That's so cool. Cause like, and that's really what I want to accomplish with this is like talking with people like you that are in this moment. Like it would be very cool to talk with you 10 to 15 years down the road, which I'm sure we will. But you know, whenever you have accomplished it, but like being in this moment where you're like, we're building this right now. This is what we're doing.
It's in it.
So cool and valuable. And it's like,
it's not work.
Yeah. And it's raw, you know, and it's real. I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
So how do you grow? You have so many, you're so knowledgeable and you're so well-versed in all these different, in your vision, and really you have a clear vision. You know where you want to go. And it seems to me that you have a good idea of the tools and an acceptable grasp of how I'm going to get there. How do you grow your toolbox? Do you read books? What kind of media do you consume?
It's a great question. I think it's something I've probably been thinking about a lot, because as much as we can lean into the conversation we had earlier about kind of the inherent confidence you have to lead a group of people and lead them well and effectively, or to find yourself in meetings or situations that maybe years ago would have been, scary. You're constantly self-evaluating. And I have this fear that I let drive me, this healthy fear of the Peter principle. You familiar with that?
No.
You only rise as high and as far as perhaps your natural and or learned skill set allows.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that's something we talk about a lot in the business with our staff. Don't be a victim of that because you only know how to cook chicken tenders. It doesn't mean you're stuck doing that. Like, why don't you learn how our order guides work? Right?
Yeah.
Why don't you learn, how to make a badass hummus? Right? Like whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like find your value and your worth. And that kind of starts with the person. They kind of have to have that self-realization that it's like, man, I don't want to be doing this forever. All right, cool. What else do you want to do?
Yeah.
And that's where, earlier in this conversation, we brought the word passion up, comes into play. I took my nephew last night to the Tennessee basketball game. We're sitting there up in the third deck because we're broke as hell. And we're sitting there talking, and he's like struggling in school a little bit. And he's a great kid, smart kid. And I was like, bud, what are you passionate about? And he's like, drumming and music. And I'm like, dude, you've got it. I was like, chicks are going to love you one day, first off, right? But yeah, lean into it then, man. Go to culinary school when you're out of high school. Like, lean into that. Come work for me.
Yeah.
We'll grow you. And if you realize you hate working for me, then man, you'll have tools to go take somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But it all starts with passion, and it starts at all levels of the business. People have to have a growth mindset. I have to have that. And if I don't have a growth mindset, then I myself will be a victim of the Peter Principle, because I have an unorthodox background. Mm-hmm. I didn't go to business. I didn't go to Wharton. Okay. I didn't do this stuff. So I really have to absorb a lot of information. And I've developed some good mentors. I've developed, a love for reading, and trying to take this stuff in. And I'm a sucker for just simple anecdotes.
Yes.
I don't want to get into deep theory. It's just like, tell me 2 sentences that I can say to this employee who might not know me and impact them.
Yeah.
What are those things? Like one for me is always anticipate the guest's needs. Mm-hmm. How simple is that?
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect.
But anticipate the guest's needs. If they are out of water, do you think they need water? Yes. Then fill up the water.
Yeah.
It's real simple, right? Do you like, when you eat dinner, do you like having plates stacked on your table? No. Then get them off the table.
Yeah.
Anticipate their needs. But it all starts and stops with that individual wanting to learn, wanting to absorb those anecdotes, wanting to grow themselves. And if they're that kind of person, then they're our kind of person.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I also want to ask and I'll kind of give, I don't know if I want to ask you first or if I want to give why I ask it. Let me ask you first. So if you couldn't do the roles that you're in right now, or could you do anything else? Like, would you just find something and do the same thing that you're doing now in another place? All that to say, and I'll give you a little reason, like what I'm kind of looking for. For me, I tell my wife all the time, like, we got wiped out. Everything went away. I would find another skill set or another thing to sell and go out and do that. Like, this is just, I have to be on this. I know this is the path for me. Do you kind of feel the same way, or what would you?
What would I do?
Yeah. Would you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know. Mm-hmm. It comes down to fight or flight at that point.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm married with 2 little girls, so the flight would not be an option.
Yes.
If I did not have a wife and 2 little girls, then I would probably just wind up in a beach town playing guitar and just, die in a motel. I would do that. Yeah, Blaze of Glory, right? Yeah, you had a good time.
Yeah, Sam Cooke style,
right? So that's not an option. And I don't let my mind go there often. But I would probably try to find something similar to what I do, just because to tap into the conversation we had off mic, I think I've developed a brand. Mm-hmm. And it's part of my identity, just the same way that playing music was part of my identity. And I have a healthy confidence that I could get into. My wife laughed at me when they were looking for a CEO. I was like, I could do it. And she's like, you cannot run an IT firm. I was like, yeah, you're right. I probably couldn't run an IT firm because I don't know shit about IT. But from just a, managing people and personalities and creating a healthy environment, which ultimately the CEO, that's what it is. Yeah. I mean, or even a COO. I mean, go Google COO. You can't find a job description.
Oh, yeah.
And COOs are successful from all walks of life because they're corralling so much information. They're managing so many things. And it is Sauron's eye. It is that umbrella. So, yeah, I think I could slide into a lot of different opportunities and be impactful. Mm-hmm. Now, would my knowledge of the opportunity be up to par? That's the question. Mm-hmm. But I would try to find something probably along the lines of what I do. I'm just passionate about it. I love it. And quite frankly, I came back to this industry because I love it. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love it. I mean, there's no other way to get around it. It's not just because, it's what I know. I came back to it by choice.
Yes.
Right. I could have done anything at that juncture in my life.
Yeah.
I chose to come back to this. I like running pirate ships. It's fun.
That's a great analogy.
I mean, I'm a good Captain Hook, and I like doing that. And it's our pirate ship, and it's our crew, and we don't want a mutiny to happen. So how do we keep everybody together and row in the same direction?
That's a great analogy for the service industry. And I think everybody. I don't have extensive experience in the service industry, but I think everybody needs to work in the service industry to some extent at some point. Probably early in their career, right? Mm-hmm. But I think it is so valuable because you gain a perspective of what goes into it.
And then also, I mean, You referenced sales earlier. Imagine going to a table. You have no idea who the people are. It's just like cold calling sales. It's like going door to door, man. And you're like, welcome. You hit them with your talking points. Here's our specials, blah, blah, blah. And then from that point on, you're having to read these people. Mm-hmm. I mean, right there, you're honing a skill that you'll use the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And that you can't put on a resume. You can't quantify it, but it's one of the biggest skills you'll ever learn. They don't like me being at the table. You can feel it.
Yeah.
So let's only check in when they need drinks. Let's check in time-based, 10 minutes after or 5 minutes after their meal arrives or whatever that is. You're just constantly reading the room. And so, yeah, it is an incredible thing to work in. It just teaches you so much about the general public.
Yes, and dealing with people.
Exactly. It's very stressful. I mean, that server, we have to tell her back of house this all the time. You guys and gals are frustrated back here because maybe they forgot to bring something in. They're coming back to say, on the fly, we need it.
Yeah.
But they're out there staring down this Karen, right? This furious person that's like, my guacamole's too green. I've actually heard that one, right?
No way, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Guacamole's too green. I go, well, man, I don't know. The Grinch made it. I don't know what to tell you, dude. I don't.
More stale out there. Yeah. For you. We'll get it for you. But.
So when you're dealing with those people, you're honing your soft skills. You're learning how to talk to people. You're getting public speaking almost. You're comfortable talking to random people. Small talk.
Yeah.
Stuff that as you get into business, you realize that's all it is.
Yes.
That's literally all it is. Who you know and how you interact with them.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah.
It's crazy.
It really genuinely is. And I think like for me, I mean, anytime that anybody's asked me for advice or anything, but it's all goes back to people. Like, I mean, that's what everything is built around.
It's that simple.
If you can learn to interact with people in a meaningful way and bring value to them, and in the same breath bring value to you. I mean, that's business. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, that's as simple as you can make it. But like learning to deal with people, learning to deal with hungry people. I mean, that's a whole other level,
right.
Or hangry people.
Right.
I mean, that is so.
We're both married, so we understand the hanger element very well. That's very, very, very real.
I really try to. So I've been on this thing for like over a year now, but I really only eat like one big meal, right? Mm-hmm. So I wait till the end of the day and I eat my one big meal. Wife, not so much. So on the weekends when we're spending all day together, I just don't even think to eat, right? I mean, because during the day at work, I just don't eat. And then so it's like, she's like, I know that you don't eat during the day. She's like, but all of us, we need to eat. Right. Like, okay, calm down.
Right. She's like, and all of us, we like, all right. Oh, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Here you go. Here's a carrot. Here you go.
Right.
Calm down. Yeah. But yeah, it's.
Here's your overnight oats.
Dude, we just made overnight oats. That's awesome. Right. Yes. Did you like chia seeds?
Hey, it's just agave nectar in it, no honey. Okay.
It's organic. It's okay.
Right. Exactly. Right.
It's okay. No, yeah, that's but yeah, it's immensely valuable.
My wife will see that segment and be like, eat shit.
I know what you're going to say. Yeah. Oh, you got yourself? You think you're funny on that? Yeah, it's like, yes, I am incredibly funny.
Actually,
you're with me.
I do, and we both laughed, so maybe it was funny.
I want to be stand-up comedian.
Touche.
But yeah, maybe we can go professional, but also personal with this. How do you go about surrounding yourself with the right people? And I can kind of give you a little context of, because I mean, for me,
like personally,
yeah, I mean, because it's tough. I mean, you kind of have the people that you grow up with or whatever. Sure. And something like we talked about off the mic earlier, there's some people that, they just don't get it. Right. Mm-hmm. How do you go about personally creating relationships, surrounding yourself with the right people?
That's a great question. And not something I've thought a lot about. I'll say that I'm very blessed to have a wonderful group of friends that, close friends that have been around a very long time. So I would like to give my 8-year-old self credit for really weeding through the less desirable friends I could have had in life and finding the ones I do have. But no, my very best friend, the best man at my wedding is a commander in the Coast Guard, went to the Coast Guard Academy, the second hardest school in the country to get into, right? Jeff is, just an incredible guy. Dustin, one of my other best friends, works with me here. We're really lucky, been friends since 1996, and value our friendship more than our business, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't let those two things get in the way. I mean, I just have a plethora of friends that are just, I think, just good-hearted people. And I guess as I get older and I look at making friends, it's a little harder, I think, in the era of life that I'm in, when you have the little kids, and your life is kind of consumed with work and family, and you have to plan time.
Yes.
Like tonight, my wife and I are going on a date tonight. Like, we had to plan it.
Yeah.
And make sure that we're valuing our relationship, all the time, and not just getting lost in the sea of responsibility. But you have to do the same thing with your buddies. We went out and did it a couple weeks ago. All of us went out and hung out. So yeah, I like people that are probably morally aligned. Things you would have tolerated from friends in younger days, you wouldn't tolerate now. So I want to be morally aligned with the people I care about. I want to be, obviously similar interests. That needs to be there somewhere. And then there needs to be mutual support. Yeah. I think that's the thing too. Like, I try to be a present friend in the sense that, I don't have no problem checking up on buddies I haven't seen in a while, or just telling them I love them, or whatever that is. Like, I'm very emotionally forward in that regard. Just make sure people know I care about them. And thankfully, my friends do that with me. And, I turned 40 here in May, and we're going down to Placencia, Belize. And, my wife planned it, and a bunch of my buddies are coming.
That's cool.
And it is cool because we didn't put any pressure on anybody to come.
That's awesome.
Because it's such a financial commitment. Yeah. And so when you start to see buddies line up and bringing the whole families and renting, everybody's getting their own house, and, all right on the beach. And it's like, wow, it's doing it because they care about me, and it's humbling. Yeah. So I think that's that, friendship is so reciprocal. And when you feel like someone is an energy vampire on you, where they're only taking your energy and they're never giving you any, those are the friends that fall to the wayside, the friends with drama. Yeah. Right. So I think my friend group has probably shrunk unintentionally, just because of life, and also what I'm looking for out of friendships.
I've kind of been tossing around in my head is like, okay, well, maybe a lot of it is making the right choices, and then it will lead you to the right people in that sense, because they're making similar choices as you. There's, my dad told me,
it's good. It's good.
My dad told me when I was growing up, he's like, as you kind of go throughout your life, you're going to end up having, in theory, a lot more in common with people farther down the road. Like, you have, in grade school, like, you just happen to be born in the same spot together. Right? Sure. And then in high
where your
school,
parents were friends.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And then you just get smushed into this class together. In high school, maybe you can get a little bit more in common with somebody because you're going to specific clubs, or you play football or whatever. In college, everybody at that college chose to go to that college. They enjoy specific things about that. And then you have the sub of the clubs. And then now with like business and meeting people out in everyday life and adult life, it's like, okay, well, I'm finding more and more meeting the people is like the choices that I'm making. So, yeah. So where do I have?
Yeah, man, that's really good. It's true.
It's more of a byproduct of the choices as opposed to the like intentionally. And then it's hard because unless you're extremely famous, you're not going to sit here like, yes, no, you can be my friend.
Right,
you can't be my friend.
Right.
It just has to happen organically. Right. And I think so the more choices, the right choices, or the choices that you make that have, and that you have in common with your future people that you want to surround yourself with, I think. And that's been something I've been trying to consider in my head is like, is this a decision, or if I do this or this, do I want to go to this place or this place? Well, where are there going to be more people that I think I would want to be around? And then we do that. And then, and so it's something my wife and I are kind of pushing around too.
That's good.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
No, it's so true. I mean, it's like, I hadn't quite processed it that way, but that's very true.
And then you just end up being around people, and then, but it's kind of harder. And I'm sure you can 100% relate to this, is like my wife and I mean, I'm 25, she's 24. We have 2 kids, so, 2.5 and 1.5. So we're like coming through the fire.
You're in the throes. Yeah.
And then, but it's also hard because like a lot of people our age, aren't in that stage of their life. Yeah. And then also if they are, a lot of times maybe they aren't in the same like mindset, they're just, it's not this growth mindset that we had talked about before. So it's like we end up finding ourselves hanging around with older people but then also, and then we're like, should we feel weird about that? But then it's like, no, it's like, these are the people that, I mean, it's just who you have in common with. So it's very interesting. And I always try to get as much perspective from people that I look up to and admire. Is like, well, how do you go about it?
Yeah.
Because I think that's incredibly impactful. I mean, I know everybody's heard, like, you are who you hang out with, right?
Yeah.
The 5 people that you hang out with is the average is going to be who you are going to be a reflection of. So it's like, how do you start to weed that out?
That's great. The only advice my dad gave me, which again, I like simple anecdotes. Yeah. Your friends are like an elevator. They'll take you up or they'll take you down.
That's really good.
Right. And so as a kid, I was always like, okay, well, that's guy's the basement level on the elevator. I'm going to pass on. I like him, but I'm going to pass on it, in a real personal sense. But yeah, that's very, I would have never thought that at 25. I was more like, man, it's Tuesday night. Let's go to the bar. Like I wouldn't have thought that. So you're way ahead of the curve in that. And you're right. That'll put you in places and around people that are making similar decisions and similar, or people that could impact you.
How important is patience to you? Like in everything that you do?
I wish I were better at it. I like to think I'm a patient person. I like to think I give grace and try to be empathetic to things. I probably have, it's important to me to answer your question, but I do have a hot streak that certain things can trigger quickly. And so that's probably something I could continue to improve. I have improved quite a bit, but continue to improve is just when something catches me wrong, I have a tendency to just get it by the throat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And end the threat.
Yes. So
not physically, but don't try me. But don't try me. Right. So I think that's just something that, I can continue to work on. But I would say that generally I'm a patient person. And this, kids have been an incredible tool for patience.
Yeah. They're good for a personal relationship.
Yeah, right. They have taught me a lot about that. And I was telling somebody the other day, it's like, if you can effectively raise kids and have them wind up being positive members of society, you have learned a tremendous amount of emotional intelligence along the way.
Yeah.
Right. Because you are constantly controlling your emotions. It's like last night I took my girls to the basketball game with my nephew and my brother. And, you're down there, you're buying hot dogs, you're buying popcorn, you're paying for the parking pass, you're paying for the ticket, you bought pizza at the house, you're buying M&Ms, you bought them a Squishmallow on the way. And then, we're sitting there and there's 14 minutes left in the game and they're like, this sucks. You're just like, let me tell you what sucks. When I was a kid, it sucked, then I'm like, sounding like my dad, like he did walk to school uphill both ways in the snow, like when did I turn into my old man?
Yeah.
So yeah. And then you're just like, you don't know how good you have it. Like the other day, I forget, they're so spoiled. And I pulled up on YouTube, like, suffering kids in Appalachia. Mm-hmm. I'm like, watch this.
Yeah.
These people are in our backyard.
Yes. Yeah.
And, we need to have servitude and hearts towards this. Mm-hmm. You have it good. You don't know how good you have it. Mm-hmm. Like, part of the reason I wanted to go to a nothing fishing village in Belize, I want them to see shacks. I want them to see struggle. I want, make sure when we travel and take them around the world and do things that we expose them to life and things. And, it is all about the experience and that all of us are the exact same, only we just might look different or come from someplace different, but we're all hardwired the same way.
Yeah.
And everybody deserves our respect.
Yeah, I think that's, and what's funny is a lot of these concepts that we've already talked about lead into kids. Something that I've had to really make sure that I lean into with our kids is like being intentional and being present minded is like, okay, this is the situation.
It's hard with the cell phone, right?
Yeah. And then that's something too. How do you balance, how do you balance that? Well, I've got stuff going on that I need to be thinking about and be prepping for, I need to be working towards. But then you've also got like, they deserve, if not more than just as much, if not more than the business, my attention and my thoughts and my, you know, do you have any kind of advice on that? You know, how have you been able to strike a balance?
I bought a camper.
Really? Yeah.
I bought a camper, wife and I, and prioritized time in the woods.
Wow. Yeah.
Where staying at places sometimes that don't have a Wi-Fi signal and they have to ride their scooters and we have to go try to make leaves float down the river. Right. Or, you know, we have to go do those things. And getting them out and away from all the technology. I mean, that's one way we've tried to do it, and go do that frequently. Or, you know, on Sundays, oftentimes we'll take them to Cades Cove and we pack, you know, the old Yeti and the Yeti blanket, and we've got a spot that I've sourced years ago. It's a badass picnic spot.
Yeah,
and we always do the loop. Let them go to the bathroom, and then we hit a little honey hole and just put the blanket out, and we'll stay there for 2 hours with no cell phone service.
That's awesome.
And just watch them run in the field, and there's usually deer eating, and it's just like, you know, we'll just lay on the blanket. And it's always in those moments, I'm just like, just like you're saying, just remind myself to be present with my wife, with my kids, to give thanks for the opportunity to be doing that, to be employed and to do something I love. And my wife feels that way about her position, and just be thankful. I don't think I do that enough, you know, and camping and getting outside. My dad was always really good about that with me when I was little. He would take me on, he called them nostalgia trips.
Yeah.
That's how I know about Newport. But he would be like, man, I know this 1950s styled roadside motel in Abingdon, Virginia, we're going to go to. And that's just an example, but we would go up there, we'd buy me some race car toys, and we would go to a drive-in movie, go to the Martha Washington Inn, and he'd teach me about the history of it and the ghost stories, and then go stay in the roadside motel and then drive back to Knoxville, and just me and him, just chilling.
That's cool. Yeah.
And he would make sure to do that a lot. And knowing his position and the stress that he was under, and, you know, to take the time to do that with me, it really resonated with me in my older age. And I think that's the camping and the things we do with our girls is a direct result of my dad trying to teach me to be present. And maybe he was trying to teach himself to be present.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
You know, people, it's crazy because you saying it, like, I resonated with that moment of like being present and like having those moments. Cause I mean, my son now at 2.5 is just now getting to that age to where it's like,
yeah,
he's like my buddy and we can go do stuff and I can talk with him and he can tell me, and like, we're out. He's like, he's a little boy now. He's not a baby anymore. I'm curious to hear how you feel about this. I feel like that's an impactful moment as a dad. Yeah.
And my best friend, Jeff from the Coast Guard, he gave me unbelievable advice before we had our first kid. And I'm curious just to see if this hits you the way it did me. He's like, you know, when you don't have kids, all you hear is, oh, the moment you see it, you're going to be in love with this thing, you know? Well, the reality of it is, yeah, absolutely. But that little thing is really relying on mama. Mm-hmm. And I found myself as a dad, and Jeff told me this. He's like, you know, you're going to be a hospitality. You're running a bed and breakfast. Okay. Like you're getting things for mom. You're getting things for baby. Baby only knows mom because baby is, you know, with mom all the time. Mm-hmm. And as a dad, it's like, well, where's my connective tissue to this? Mm-hmm. And if he hadn't told me to be on the lookout for that, I wonder if I would have gotten in the headspace of being like, is there something wrong with me that I don't feel this incredible connection immediately?
Yes. No. Yeah.
And so by having that advice, I was able to kind of navigate that connection in real time and not get down on myself for the situation. And I, you know, I don't know if other guys do or don't do that, but it's true, because the moment when it starts to recognize you and they become little buddy.
Yeah.
And when it's like 2 and 3 and it starts to flip and it feels more even between dad and mom and where the attention goes, that was like a pivotal moment for me to feel like that connectivity with my kids that then you get to grow upon.
Yes.
You know?
No, really, because I didn't have anybody tell me that.
Yeah.
And now that you've mentioned it, it is something I'll be passing on to everybody. I mean, because we had kids fairly early, so it's like I will be in the position to have had kids before a lot of people. So I will 100% pass that on, because now that you say that, you know, thankfully I was never down in the dumps about it.
Yeah. And I don't think I would have been either, but
I mean, it was one of those, well, and we had 2 kids in 362 days. So like, I didn't have a lot of time to kind of be chilling with RJ, until Evelyn came, which is another thing that kind of, looking back upon it, and we didn't intentionally do that, but, it's like, okay, well, maybe I should have cherished him more as like a tiny little baby. But I can remember specific moments in both of their lives in which I had those, like, these are, I now have a value to bring to them.
Yes. That's it.
It's like, I understand my role now.
Yes. That's it.
I mean, and that eye opening, and then and it's cool because now like my daughter at 1.5 is getting to the point to where it's like, I'm having another realization. I already had one. I remember specifically like one time it was like, we went on vacation with my wife's family, and RJ was like 1.5. Evelyn was like 7 months. And so she was still a baby, right? But she was kind of babbling or whatever. But essentially that whole vacation, like she was finally getting quite literally off the teat, right? I mean, she wasn't, fully off of breast milk or anything like that. But she wasn't like always had to be with my wife.
Right.
I remember like during that vacation, I was like, when we got home, I had a whole nother connection with her because it was like, all right, I'm your like protector. She stayed on my little chest harness that whole vacation.
Got to feed her.
Yeah. And I fed her and I did everything, and it was like, all right, well, okay. And then, with RJ, it's like, okay, he loves to golf. He loves golf more than anything. So now our thing, like we went this past weekend and, I told him, because it was the same morning or the same day I did the roof.
No, yeah.
And so it was colder than I thought, but I told him all week, I was like, I'll take you golfing on Saturday. It's supposed to be nice. And then I always try to never tell them a lie if I can't help it, right? I mean, there's some things you just can't do sometimes, but if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And so I ended up taking him golfing, and just it's been like 2 or 3 months since we were golfing, but just in that 2 or 3 months, I was like, this is a totally different little guy. Mm-hmm. Like he's grown up. I mean, he's talking about the day he had, we're talking about everything. And he's a smart little dude. And he's actually picking out different clubs that he wants to bring. I have him his little clubs, and he picks out his different ones for putting and chipping and stuff. And, and all that to say is like, I remember specific moments for each one of those. And it's like, this is who I'm meant to be. This is the value. And I think there's also too, is like, it's cool too, to see, it's like they're getting into more moments where it's like, they're falling down. You say, all right, you're good.
You're good.
Go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's hit it again. Mm-hmm. And it's a different kind of love that you can, that your wife can provide, or it's a different, and then it's helped me and my wife grow together because it's like, we each have roles here, and we each have it's just like any other organization. You're like, all right, well, we each have our things that we're good at, and we have things that we're not
right.
good at. Right. And we can help each other fill in our weaknesses, but we can also empower the other to lean into their
absolutely
strengths. And
absolutely.
So I think if you have the right partner, I've seen a lot of people, kids. My brother-in-law is a welder, and whenever he was going through school, like they put their welds through a weld test. And I was like, kids are a weld test for your relationship. And so any slight fractures or whatever, it's going to
magnify.
It's going to magnify. And marriage is also like one of those things, but it's not like kids. Like when it's 2 a.m., you got a screaming baby or 2 screaming babies, and it's like you're tired and you're at each other. It's like, it's going to test every little thing. If you are communicating, it's going to show.
Absolutely.
If you are communicating, then that'll or then you improve, and then it's like, oh, well, yeah, we're moving a lot better now. But I always tell them, like, they're a stress test. But whenever you pass the stress test, it makes you stronger, and it makes you feel like, okay, we're actually doing something here. Maybe some parts fail, and then you remedy it and you move on forward. But I think I tell people is like, don't be afraid of kids, but realize that it's going to be a stress test on your.
And a lot of people think it's a fixer, right?
And it is the opposite.
It'll bring us together. It'll bring us together. Like, I don't know, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, and I hate to say never, but
but to your point, it will bring all those things to the surface, and they will have to be dealt with. Mm-hmm. And you just hope that it, like you said, it winds up for the good. And
you hope that you have built a relationship in which you are flexible enough and you have enough good communication and you realize, like, we are not perfect.
Right.
We're always growing. There will be challenges that arise that are different than the challenges we had yesterday. So we're going to have to hit them. I mean, it is a microcosm for everything else in life. I mean, really,
it really is
with business. And Dude, I'm telling you,
the
best sales training is having two small children, two toddlers, and trying to get them to do something that they do not want to do. Or
it's true. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
It's like, what value can I bring to you in this?
Oh, you're right.
You know,
you're giving a pitch. You're giving a pitch. Yeah.
Hey, why don't we do the jams and then let's Mic-Mac it up.
Yes, exactly. That's it.
Mic-Mac it up in bed. Doesn't that sound like it? And then now my son Dalton can vouch for this. Dalton got very close with the kids because we travel a lot, but this is like RJ in a lot of his phrases. If he's trying to get you something, does that sound like a good idea?
Yeah.
Is that a good idea?
Yes, it does. Take my money. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think fatherhood is something that is very cool. And if you look at it as just like anything else, if you look at the obstacles of fatherhood as an opportunity for growth, I think it can impact a lot of different things.
Yeah. I agree with everything you said. It is, and it's been an incredible journey. But to tie back to that original question, it does teach you a lot. It teaches you a lot of humility and patience, and I hope that translates to employees. As you move up and you manage more people, more of that patience is required, more of the deft touch is required. Right? You can't just be the bull in the china shop that maybe got shit done back in the day, but now, you have to be evolving and be a smarter bull in a china shop.
It's nuanced.
Yeah. China's expensive. I don't want to break it anymore. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, Ryan, thank you so much.
Yeah, man. My pleasure.
This has been really awesome. I just appreciate your time and I appreciate your insight. And genuinely, I really appreciate everything you do for the community. I appreciate it's people like you that move communities forward. It's people like you that give people like me something to aspire towards. So I appreciate you for all that.
Yeah, my pleasure, man.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thank you all very much for watching, and we will see you next time.